Welcome back to Sunrise Today, where we continue our focus today on looking at matters in the political landscape, leadership. Yes, you do know that lots of comments coming through now about what is required of leadership. And then started off when former President Obasanjo said, look, the younger generation has failed. And then we had some more comments coming through, which we'll bring to you in the course of the program today. But we're joined this morning by Mr. Robert Clarke, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria. Morning, and thank you for coming on this morning. Good to have you again, sir.
It's always my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. And looking at this comment by former president, we have people who have said, look, the message, the messenger, and all shades of opinion usually accompany his comments. And talking about leadership and the younger generation who he said, look, have not lived up to their billing. He talked about former governor Sigbene John. He talked about Salisu Buhari, who came up with a fake certificate. He talked about former Lagos State Governor Bola Tinubu, how his own was covered up. He just went on and on. But from your perspective, what do you think of all this?
Well, I was not very happy when I was listening to Professor Akiame's reply to that statement. Instead of, hitting the nail on the head, he brought in diplomacy into the matter and said, oh, look, all leaders in Nigeria from 1970 have all failed us.
He's a diplomat, you remember?
Yeah, that's diplomacy. I thought you asked him to reply to Obasanjo's statement, but instead of, replying, he diplomatically said all of them have failed, which in effect means that Obasanjo himself had failed. But that is not the problem. President Obasanjo is insisting that the younger ones have failed. But he needs to reflect back to Nigerian leadership from 1954 to 1960 to 1966. There had never been any time in Nigerian politics and the development of the nation that any leader who was not a young man had ever emerged. Let us take pre-colonial time. Obafemi Awolowo, at the age of 42, became the leader of the action group. Late Bode Thomas, at the age of 38, became the deputy leader of the action group. Zik, at 40-something, took over from Abat Macaulay, as leader of the NCNC. By 1954, by 1960, virtually all the regional premiers, Ahmadu Bello, at the age of 48, was premier of northern Nigeria. Awolowo, at the age of 48, was premier of western Nigeria. When Eyo Ita was toppled and Zik became governor of eastern Nigeria, he was just 52. So at every time in the growth of political development in Nigeria, there were young men who were doing this. Obasanjo took over the mantleship of presidency of this country, or head of state, when he was 38 years of age. Although his reincarnation, his second coming, he came in at the age of 60-something. Maybe he had matured enough. But the successes that Obasanjo recorded in Nigerian political history is more profound when he was at the age of 38 to 42 than his coming back at the age of 60-something. So, if one looks back, except for President Obasanjo, Nigeria has always had a leadership of youths. The question now is, why are you saying the youths have failed? If you say the youths have failed, it means Gawan has failed the nation. It means Muritala Mohammed, who took over at the age of 38, had failed the nation. It means he himself, Obasanjo, who took over from Muritala at the age of 38 or 39, has also failed.
Sir, is it possible that we're not really reading this in context? I mean, because he was saying something to the effect that if in how many years of independence we cannot pick out one leader whom we celebrate, then perhaps as a nation we are jinxed. He used very strong words, that we are cursed in terms of leadership if there is not one. I would think that would also include himself. And I think possibly reflecting, he also looked at what he's seen also. He said the young people are no better. Look at this person, look at that person, and, given examples. Do you think it's just a case of despairing, other than just, trying to exonerate himself above other people?
No, I don't think he's trying to exonerate himself. Let us be clear on this. Former President Obasanjo is a very shrewd man, highly intelligent man, somebody you like to have around you and talk to. And he has made many achievements for this country. I always know he refers that when he left government in 1979, the maritime situation in Nigerian shipping line, they had 22 ships. The Nigerian Airways, they had about 30 flying, aeroplanes. But when he came back, the second coming of Obasanjo, none of these were available. And he felt something was wrong. But the question is, as you rightly said, there is something fundamentally wrong with Nigeria. And he's correct to the extent, including himself, that Nigeria had never produced a leader. But that, as far as I'm concerned, may be a subjective, statement. Because to some groups of people, look at the Yoruba people, they look at Awolowo. What Awolowo did in Western region, which today is made up of about 7 or 8 states, can never be surpassed by any governor. And he did this when he was in his 40s. Ikeja Industrial Estate was created by the Western region. I don't think any other government for the past 30, 40 years has done something similar. And as I was listening to one of you, in your previous statements, there are no more housing estates. Today, when you are going to Lekki, drop me at Jakonde Estate. Or when you are coming to your station, you drop me in Otedola's estate. These were former politicians who were able, with the small amount of money they had, to build these estates that are still existing today. The problem is that governance in Nigeria has changed from 1980, 79, when Shagari took over government, on a presidential system of governance. Take it or leave it, I believe Obasanjo imposed a presidential system of governance on this country. That has been the rot in this country. When you allow a chief executive of a state to wield absolute political power, absolute, economic power in a state, and also without any inhibitions.
Isn't it because of the ineffectiveness of the checks and balancing that there are?
You see, checks and balances are in the Constitution. But when you have a political party that believes that its hold on its membership is a continuous hold, whether they're in government or not. Look at Obama in America today. Once he is nominated by the party and he starts his campaign, the party has nothing to do with his campaign again. He organizes his own campaign committee. Here in Nigeria, once election comes in now, the former presidents will start coming into campaign. The party chairman will follow them. You don't see that in civilized countries. The individual, because he knows that when he assumes power, he's no more under the strong, tight, fisted hands of the party. Today, the minister or the secretary of defense or something in America is a Republican who had served with President Bush. If it were in Nigeria, if Jonathan today appoints an APC or something, PDP will start. And again, one of the systems that has to be corrected, which is breeding corruption, is that once a president is elected, he now calls on the governors to nominate ministers for him. So that you find that the president has no control over his ministers.
Isn't
because
that the political balancing act?
No, the Constitution says pick a minister or two from each state.
But he can't just, can he, if he unilaterally does that picking, won't he have problems with implementation? Because, you know how they say...
The problem he's going to have is from his party. And this is what I'm saying. That the party does not know when to loosen the belt from a candidate. They still tie the belt around the president, even as president. And if he does not do what the party wants, they threaten him with impeachment. The state governor must kowtow to the chairman of the party in his state. It should not be so.
We spoke with Chief Richard Akinjide some time ago about the systems of government that we have. And I think if I remember properly, he did say that even if we have a parliamentary system, that the government might even come down faster than we have this presidential system, because every minute, if they move a vote of no confidence, the guy might be out.
I have known Richard Akinjide for years. I have had the opportunity of talking to him. About 2 years ago, we were doing the same case. And I told him that there are two people in Nigeria. Throughout their lives, they have lived and were supported by government. Himself and Obasanjo.
Wow.
Akinjide became a minister at the age of 24 when he came back from England as a lawyer. So he had seen the parliamentary system. He was part of the parliamentary system. Akinjide also had seen the political system under a presidential system. And he knows that under a presidential system, you are not accountable to anybody because of the way it is run in Nigeria.
Exactly. I mean, that's why a host of people have said that regardless of what we run, I mean, it's not the system of government that has the problem. It is how we run it as a people.
I agree with you, but the problem is that how do your leaders emerge? You see, in America today, it is not the party that submits a candidate for election, even though he is elected under the platform of a candidate, but he has to run through a gamut of primaries. So if Obama...
Which we do here as well. We have primaries, don't we?
We have primaries here, and that is why I said, after the primaries, we have not learned the lesson where the party has now to loosen the stronghold. Once a candidate emerges, he's no more representing the party. He's going to represent the whole constituency, which is Nigeria. That is our problem. The party still breathes on the neck of any president today.
So if I get you right, sir, you're saying that you have absolutely no problem with the presidential system of government. It's just the parties who should learn to loosen the belt. Their hold
Number one, not only that, you see, when you look at the Constitution, Section 5 of the Constitution says when a president is elected, he assumes all executive functions of Nigeria. He is at liberty either to pick ministers to help him or not to pick. And that is why President Obasanjo, when he was president, refused to appoint a minister for petroleum and made himself, and I was joking with him one day that, look, I'm going to take you to court. You have assumed the position of a minister without submitting your name to the Senate for confirmation. And he told me, he said, look, sit down, you son man. When I was elected, I, Obasanjo, assumed all political executive powers. And by virtue of that, it is only those powers I do not intend to execute that I am under the Constitution obliged to appoint ministers. And let me quote his word, who will be clinically examined by the Senate. Say, but where I decide to hold on a ministry, I don't need to submit anything. And he was correct. I looked so naive when he said it. But that is the truth. And that is what we have in Nigeria. Outside God today, the president of Nigeria is the most powerful man on earth.
Would you then suggest the parliamentary system of government?
Look, I have said it not once or twice on this program. We have tasted the two systems. Like the Yorubas say, maybe if a wife does not taste, another matrimonial home, she will not know which one is. Look, we have tasted parliamentary system. It is less expensive. A parliamentary system has its own checks and balances within the parliament. Under a parliamentary system, no minister can become a minister except he wins an election and is a member of the House.
But again, you know the problem here. Some would say even the presidential system, we have actually twisted it in our own favor. So in that case, some will also argue that how sure are you that the parliamentary system, when it comes into being at this point in time in our polity, we won't actually change it to the extent that we'll just be amazed at how we operate it?
We are not changing the presidential system. We are maneuvering ourselves through all whatever roadblocks A governor cannot do anything without consulting the House. But what we know in Nigeria today, the governor will take a phone and call the Speaker of the House, I want to see you in a minute's time. And you find the Speaker rushing to the governor's lodge. And he will tell him, oh, I want to do this. I want to, yes, sir, Your Excellency. That's what you will hear. Whereas under the system,